It's a battle between the team that has dominated this entire year and the team that has been the hottest coming into the NBA Finals. Hey everyone, this is Spectator Sports. I'm your host Sebastian Fonseca, here to break down Celtics-Mavs. Remember to drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so, and let's get into previewing this NBA Finals. The Boston Celtics have cruised throughout this entire postseason on their way to only losing 2 games during this entire postseason run. They've cruised, they have barely faced any adversity except a couple of injuries, especially to Kristaps Porzingis, but he is returning to the NBA Finals. And the main heads of the snake obviously starts off with the J&Js. Jason Tatum, leading scorer throughout the Boston Celtics postseason run, and the Eastern Conference Finals MVP in Jaylen Brown. Both have been great in this postseason run, and now they're heading into the NBA Finals as heavy favorites. They have been great in the regular season. They have had 8 Celtics players knock down at least 100 3-pointers or more, so it's a team full of snipers, and that makes it very hard on the Mavs because it's very likely that all 5 players on the court at a given time for the Celtics team are capable of making a 3-pointer. That means spreading out the floor and creating easy driving lanes into the paint as they hunt for banner number 18. The Dallas Mavericks have gone through this entire postseason run without even having home court advantage. They faced the LA Clippers, beat them in 6. They faced the number 1 seeded Oklahoma City Thunder, beat them in 6 again. And then everyone's bandwagon pick, fresh off of beating the defending champions, they beat the Minnesota Timberwolves in a gentleman's sweep. And while doing that, this is obviously headlined by their star backcourt duo, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. And they have been just so good because they can create so many shots at arguably the best closers in the game today. And that makes them very dangerous in terms of creating their own shot, creating for others, and they can be a very big test for this Boston Celtics team. And while the Celtics may have the depth, they don't have the best player in Luka Doncic on this court. Let's break down some matchups in this series, starting off with how do you stop Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic? Trick question, you don't. I think the best way to do so is just to limit the damage that one of these two can do, starting off with Kyrie Irving. Kyrie is the smaller of the two, and you just know that Luka Doncic is going to get his. He's going to figure out the code and crack the code that is the Boston Celtics defense. They can bring physicality to Kyrie. They have Jrue Holiday, they have Derek White, and at times they can even throw Jaylen Brown at Kyrie Irving. I think in those circumstances, going that way probably bodes well for them. They can be problematic and just cut one head off this 2-headed snake and just limit the Mavericks to allowing Doncic to go off and not allowing his teammates to beat him, which I think is very unlikely, especially with Kyrie being limited. Who's going to guard Luka Doncic? Well, I think the best matchup for the Boston Celtics would be putting Jaylen Brown on him. Jaylen is long, he's strong, and he just has those abilities, that physique that I think could be a pretty nasty combination to bother Luka Doncic. We know that Lou Dort back in the conference semifinals bothered a lot of Luka Doncic due to his strength, and I think another person you could throw that's similar, maybe even a Lou Dort plus, is Jrue Holiday. He's a highly pedigreed defensive player. He's been great in postseasons past, and just putting him on Luka Doncic, getting up and underneath him in terms of the jump shot and his upward motion, disrupting that is going to be key for the Boston Celtics. Now for the Mavericks, how do they stop Tatum and Brown? Well, I think the guys that match up best for them are Derek Jones Jr. on Jason Tatum, and then maybe a mix of Luka Doncic and PJ Washington on Jaylen Brown. I think the issue is that you have Tatum, he has a very tall physique. He has the ability to rise up above smaller defenders. And I think Derek Jones, given his length, his size, I think can somewhat disrupt and bother Jason Tatum. That's a big ask, but has a similar physique that Andrew Wiggins provided for the Golden State Warriors 2 years ago in the 2022 NBA Finals. For Jaylen Brown, he is a very tough guard as well. He can get downhill, and what you want to do is at least have Luka Doncic in not on one-on-one predominantly in the game to save his legs, and I think that's something where PJ Washington is probably going to guard him, and you can funnel him maybe towards the bigs that are either Daniel Gafford or Derek Lively. I think those guys are going to be key at protecting the rim, and something I think the Mavericks have to do, because the biggest X factor that the Celtics have is Kristaps Porzingis returning to the lineup. His ability to stretch out the floor, he's a two-way threat, but also to score out of the post poses big issues. But I think Maxi Kleber is a guy that can help out for the Dallas Mavericks. His ability to switch between Lively and himself, he can guard on the perimeter, he can defend the paint as well. Not the best option, but I think in terms of who's available for Dallas, that is what they have at their disposal. Maxi is also a good two-way player. He can make three-point shots as well, and I think that is going to be the Mavs' best bet. Maybe a little more Maxi Kleber and cutting down the minutes of Daniel Gafford, not cutting him out entirely from this lineup, but I think that's the best way to go about it. Let's talk about the X factors heading into this series. I think the biggest X factor is indeed the Celtics' ability to make three-pointers. They live and die by the three-pointer, and times where they don't hit, they definitely become vulnerable to losing a game. But when they're hitting, they're basically invincible. And they have so many guys that can kill you on the outside. Like I said, they can probably put 5 guys on the court that can shoot a three-pointer. And probably the best guy in this X Factor case is Kristaps Porzingis. Now, he's missed about a month or two of play, but his ability to stretch the floor, like I said, he has the ability to block shots, rebound, score out of the post, be a pick and pop shooter, just adds another threat to the Boston Celtics, because despite him not being in this lineup, they have coasted in the Eastern Conference. But I think the Mavericks do have some ability to guard him, but it's just a matter of how consistent is Porzingis going to be in this postseason. Another guy for the Boston Celtics is Derek White. I think at times he can be the third best player, the third most important player for the Celtics team. He makes smart decisions late. He always has a nose for the basketball. Remember last year when he got that offensive rebound against the Miami Heat, he saved the Boston Celtics season that time. I think his ability to be consistent, make smart decisions, he makes three-pointers, he's a great late-game decision maker. I think that's just a guy that Joe Mazzulla can trust in those crunch time minutes, something we didn't see from Marcus Smart earlier in addition with the Boston Celtics. Derek White just has a nose for being right there at the right time and place. He's a good defender, smart decision maker, and he's going to be integral to stopping Kyrie Irving, because I think he's going to get that matchup at times. Now, another X factor for the Celtics is Jrue Holiday. During his time with the Milwaukee Bucks, he's been needed to score and defend, but now they don't need him to score it. All they need him to do is make those dirty work plays and get key stops on the defensive end and make timely threes. And in this run so far, he's knocked down 40% of his threes. We've seen him go all over the court. He basically ended the Pacers postseason hopes with a steal, block, offensive rebound, whatever it is you expect Jrue Holiday to do. He's very good at being an on-ball defender, and I think he's going to split time between guarding Kyrie and Luka Doncic in this NBA Finals. Now, some X factor for the Dallas Mavericks, I think it starts off with Maxi Kleber. Maxi Kleber hasn't played a lot in this postseason run, but he's back. And I think his ability to guard Kristaps Porzingis, guard on the perimeter, and also defend the paint is integral to the Mavericks' hopes. Because, like I said, you want to have more Kleber minutes and fewer Gafford minutes just due to his switchability. And Derek Lively Jr., his ability to be a two-way player, be an offensive rebounder, make foul shots, be a lob threat, but also be able to be a short roller guy, a guy who can hit guys on the wing, on the outside, and be a shot blocker. He's just so important to the Dallas Mavericks. And when he was knocked out of that game in Game 4 against the Minnesota Timberwolves, you saw the Mavericks just weren't totally the same. He's probably arguably at times the third best player or third most important player for the Dallas Mavericks. Wing defenders Derek Jones Jr. and PJ Washington are going to be huge for Dallas. Those guys are going to be asked to do two things: defend and make threes. We saw in different times, both guys are doing that consistently, and they're going to be asked to do that again in this NBA Finals. At times, you're going to see PJ Washington guard bigger players, but he has been able to be effective doing so. And if he's able to knock down three-pointers at a consistent clip, I think Dallas is going to be just fine. And same thing goes for Derrick Jones. He's going to be asked to guard Jason Tatum. That's a big ask, but he's done pretty well in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Anthony Edwards in this postseason run. Now he's going to be asked to do that against Jason Tatum. Let's talk about the prediction now. All it comes down to legacies. What does this mean for both franchises and how this is going to play out? The Celtics have the deeper team. I think between Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, it's going to be very hard to get a bad game from both of them. But if they do, they can survive it just due to their depth. They probably have some other guy that's able to pick up the slack with in case they don't rise up to the occasion in a given game. It really does feel like the Mavericks have to be perfect. There are so many things that have to go right for this Dallas Mavericks team. And it makes sense. Boston is the better team. They've dominated. They've won both games against the Dallas Mavericks in the regular season. They're fresher. They're not as tired. But I do think the Dallas Mavericks are a significantly bigger jump than their Eastern Conference competition. I think the Celtics aren't really ready to make that drastic jump from the Pacers, the Cavs, and the Miami Heat to the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks have been battle tested. They have been through adversity. They've trailed in series, and they've been able to grind it out. And while the Mavs maybe need to be perfect, they've proven that they can win without being perfect. They have missed opportunities to really put your foot on the opponent's neck, but still found ways to adjust game to game behind Jason Kidd and that coaching staff. And they do have the best player and probably the best set of closers with him and Kyrie Irving. The series may go 7 games, and even so, I'm going to stick with my pick of who I think is going to come out in this series. I'm going to go with the Dallas Mavericks in 6 games or 7 games, but I'm definitely picking the Dallas Mavericks to win this NBA Finals just because they have the best player on the court. And I think that's really what matters when it comes down to it. I think they have the extra pieces, and it's not just going to be Luka carrying the Mavs, but I'm going to pick the Dallas Mavericks to win this series in 6 games. And that's it for this preview of the 2024 NBA Finals. Remember guys, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Shout out to Joey for editing this podcast. Welcome back, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.